जय जय श्री राधे, श्री वल्लभाधीश की जय हो। सब वैष्णवों को जय Shri Krishna. Today is the 32nd day of our 84 Vaishnav, 84 Vaishnav stories, continuing with the story of Prabhudas Jalota. Part 1. One day, Sri Acharyaji travelled to Mathura, where he sat in his meditation place on Vishram Ghat to perform his evening prayers. 4 Vaishnavas, Damodar Das Harsani, Krishna Das Meghan, Prabhudas, and one other Vaishnava from Mathura were there with him. At that time, the devotees of Sri Krishna Chaitanya, named Rupa and Sanatan Goswamiji, came to have the sight of Sri Acharyaji. They bowed low to him. Rupa and Sanatan asked him who the 4 Vaishnavas were. He replied that they were his disciples. Rupa and Sanatan then asked, "Your path is called the path of grace and spiritual nourishment, so why are they all so thin?" Sri Acharyaji replied, "I told them not to come, but they came anyway. They are reaping the reward of this." In this way, Sri Acharyaji was disguising the inner meaning of his statement, and the two did not understand what he meant. They took his leave and then went to Sri Jagannath Puri, where they met with Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who asked them where they were coming from. They replied that they were just coming from Vraja. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhuji asked them if they had managed to meet Sri Acharyaji. They told him that they had seen him at Vishram Ghat. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu asked them if they had discussed anything with him. They told him that they had asked him why his disciples from his path of grace were so thin, and that he had said that he had advised them not to come, but that they came anyway, and now they were suffering the results. Hearing this divinely orientated statement from Sri Acharyaji, Sri Krishna Chaitanya fainted and remained in that condition for 2 hours. He asked them the same question 3 times, got the same answer, and fainted every time he heard it. The 4th time he asked, they didn't say anything. So Sri Krishna Chaitanya remained conscious. Bhav Prakash, the inner meaning. Sri Krishna Chaitanya was able to recognize something of Sri Acharyaji's Swarup, or true identity, and a little of what he had said. If he had understood everything, he would have left his body then and there. Sri Acharyaji said that he had told them not to come, but because they came anyway, they were suffering the consequences. In the Sri Rasa Panchadhyayi, the 5 chapters of Srimad Bhagavatam describing Sri Krishna's pastimes with the gopis, Sri Krishna orders the gopis to return to their homes, but they refuse. They attained the fruit of the Rasa Leela, the ultimate reward of dancing with the beloved Lord. Here, however, Sri Acharyaji is explaining this along with the lawful limitations that must be observed within this ultimate attainment. When a soul first makes a plea to become a disciple and a devotee, they should be refused. This is done in order to test the potential sevak's steadfastness and resolve. If after that they are full of the loving desire to serve, then they will achieve this status and reap the reward. With this heartfelt Leela connection, Sri Acharyaji says that he first advised them not to come to this path, for this is the path of the Vraja Bhaktas, the gopis. When they wanted to come to Sri Thakurji, they surrendered everything they had along with themselves, giving up even eating and drinking, and they naturally renounced the desire for any other type of comfort. Having done all of this, they then reap the reward of separation from the Lord. Their bodies become thin, and the grief of separation overcomes them. Their eyes remain full of tears, their throat dries up, their bodies begin to sweat, they faint, they cry, dance, and manifest are the symptoms of deep devotion. Part 2. Prabhudas always did his own cooking. One day the cooking got spoiled, the lentil soup was not properly cooked, and the breads were burnt. He did not want to offer such preparation, so he mixed in some foot dust from Sri Acharyaji and ate. Bhav Prakash. Prabhudas was a grace-filled devotee, and his heart was soft, just like Sri Thakurji's. He felt, therefore, that he should not offer such preparations. The scriptures declare that aubergine, watermelon, burnt grains, and masoor dal are forbidden substances. Therefore, he did not want to offer what he had cooked. It is also offensive to eat unoffered food, so he mixed in the prasad of Sri Acharyaji's feet and ate it. Then Sri Thakurji told Sri Acharyaji that he was hungry and waiting for his meal offering. He told him that Prabhudas had, however, eaten. Bhav Prakash. There is a very important devotional principle expounded here. Even though all Sri Thakurjis are essentially one, Sri Nanda Kumarji, the son of Sri Nanda, still at the same time there are as many Sri Thakurjis as there are devotees because of the nature of the personal love that is between them. Therefore, Prabhudas and Sri Thakurji was able to say, Sri Thakurji was able to say that Prabhudas had eaten without first offering to his own Sri Thakurji. Part 2 continued. Sri Acharyaji vituperated Prabhudas, asking him why he had eaten without offering. Prabhudas explained that the preparations had not been well made, and that he had therefore mixed the foot nectar, charanamrit, into the food and eaten it. Why did you cook like this? Sri Acharyaji asked. Then you made Sri Thakurji wait a long time. You must be careful when you cook and always offer nice preparations. Only then may you also eat. Prabhudas did exactly this from that very moment on. Huge lesson. Bhav Prakash. Although the impurity of the foodstuffs was removed by mixing in of the prasadi foot dust, still that food was not offered, and so was not suitable to be consumed by a Vaishnava Sevak. A serving devotee should only ever eat that which has been offered to their Sri Thakurji, and that too in exactly the way that it was offered. For example, if you had offered plain yogurt on its own, you should not mix rice in it and consume. All kinds of rice offerings, rice in milk, rice in yogurt, etc., all have loving mood connections with specific devotees. A Vaishnava can partake of prasad rendered through the mixing of other prasad or the foot dust, but never for their own pleasure. The duty of a servant is to partake only of the Lord's leftovers, and it should be taken in exactly the way it is offered. This is the way that a faithful wife serves her husband. Thus the story teaches so many devotional principles. Part 3. Once Sri Acharyaji came to Vraj. He came to Sri Radha Kund. It was a winter's day. Sri Acharyaji swiftly cooked and made the offerings, after which he partook of the prasad. He then invited Prabhudas to also partake. Prabhudas said that he had not yet bathed. Bhav Prakash. Most of Sri Acharyaji's disciples would offer their own food preparations and then have prasad. On this occasion, Sri Acharyaji had bathed in Sri Radha Kund before preparing the offerings. Sri Radha Kund is Sri Swaminiji's own place and is therefore very dear to Sri Acharyaji. He asked Prabhudas to partake of this special prasad in order to shower him with exceptional grace. Prabhudas, however, observing Vaishnava rules, said that he should not because he had not yet bathed. At that time, Sri Acharyaji was immersed in the bliss of the Vraja land and wanted to show this to Prabhudas as well. Part 3 continued. Sri Acharyaji explained the form of the Vraja land in 2 verses. In every tree sits Sri Krishna holding a flute. On every leaf of every tree there is a 4-armed Krishna. This Vrindavan holds millions of tales of their pastimes. These are audible to some and not to others. The water is holier than the dust, and the dust is holier than the water. That Sri Vrindavan's tales are audible to those who have bathed and to those who have not. He graced Prabhudas by the recitation of such verses. Thus Prabhudas was able to conceive the spiritual form of the Vraja land. Part 4. Once Sri Acharyaji was in Sri Krishna's, the upholder of the Sri Giriraj mountains, temple, and was dressing and adorning the beloved. He had an idea to offer yogurt that day. He asked Prabhudas to go to try to find some. Prabhudas set off and very soon met a cowherd lady, whom he asked if she had any yogurt. "Oh yes," she said, "but what will you pay me for it?" Prabhudasji spoke up, "Give me the yogurt and I will give you whatever you ask for." The cowherd lady said, "Give me 1 rupee, but also can you grant me liberation?" Prabhudas agreed. The cowherd lady asked how she would know that he had really done this, and so he wrote on a piece of paper that he was granting her liberation in exchange for the yogurt. The cowherd lady tied that piece of paper into the corner of her sari and went home. She called her neighbour and said, "Today I sold my yogurt in exchange for liberation." The neighbour told her that Prabhudas must have deceived her. How, after all, would he be able to grant liberation? The cowherd lady argued that she should not think like that, and that he was a greatly spiritual person who had truly granted her liberation. "See," she said, "he wrote it on this piece of paper, which I have tied into my sari. He would never have lied to me." You will soon see," she said. After 2 hours she left her body. The messengers of the god of retribution, Yamaraj, came there to take her, but immediately the messengers of Vishnu turned up and told them to leave, saying that she was to be granted liberation. The messengers of the Yamaraj objected, and that she had never done anything to earn liberation, so how could that be? The messengers of Vishnu explained that one disciple of Sri Acharyaji, Prabhudas by name, had swapped liberation for some of her yogurt, and so that they had every right to claim her. The messengers of Yamaraj turned back, and the messengers of Vishnu sat her in their aerial car and carried her away. She told them that her neighbour had not believed her, and that they should go and inform her, telling her that one of Sri Acharya's disciples had swapped liberation for some of her yogurt, and that they were now taking her away. Hearing this, the neighbour ran from her house and saw the cowherd lady's dead body lying there. The neighbour asked her Vrajavasi neighbours to look in the corner of her sari and see if there was a note tied in there. There they found the note on which the deal was written. She then believed all of it. She stood up with the intention of meeting the great devotee who had given her the note so that she too could be liberated. She later became a disciple of Sri Acharyaji and thus perfected her life. Sri Acharyaji offered that yogurt brought to him by Prabhudas. Srinathji praised its sweetness. After the Seva, Sri Acharyaji asked Prabhudas where he had got such nice yogurt and what he had paid for it. He replied that he had gifted liberation for it. Sri Acharyaji asked him why he had not given devotion. Sri Thakurji really enjoyed the offering, and liberation is not a sufficient payment for such goods. Prabhudas stated that the cowherd lady had asked for liberation, and so that is what he gave her. I would have given her devotion had she asked for it. Bhav Prakash. That day was actually Dan Ekadashi, the 11th day of the month, when Sri Thakurji demands taxes from his cowherd lady devotees. Yogurt should always be offered on that day, hence Sri Acharyaji sent him to fetch some. The story shows that even Sri Acharyaji's disciples are capable of granting bhakti and mukti, devotion or liberation. Thus concludes Varta 20, the story of Prabhudas Jalota, a kshatriya from Simhanand, although truly there is no end to his story. Shri Balabhadi Shakijay, Shri Giriraj Dharana Kijay, Sab Vaishnavan ko Jai Shri Krishna, Jai Jai Shri Radhe, Jai Jai Shri Radhe. Oh.